What is up, DTube Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk a little bit about the almost invincible technology move towards almost invincible technology, and what I actually mean with that. So now I'm holding a smartphone. I'm making a video. The smartphone is not that big in size, but what actually is important here is not actually the full smartphone. It's actually the camera that is recording this thing. So if you look at it, how it can progress in the future, then you just have the camera in the future, and then it's almost invincible technology. And even with just the smartphone, that is way smaller compared to when I had to use maybe a big office, or maybe I had to use a big computer with a big screen. I needed use more hardware. Use more hardware that is more visible, let's say. But now it is going to almost invincible state where you're getting the same sort of outcome as you got in the past, but it's just more invincible. It is almost invincible. It's not fully invincible, but almost. And also that it happens, or let's say the rewards, it's also in some ways invincible or almost invincible, because eventually when you just have computers pinging each other. I saw a video on TED Talk where one guy was talking to a spammer, and he had some fun with that, and then he wrote a script where each time the spammer wrote to him, the computer pinged the spammer back. And then you sort of see, oh, wait a sec, we can sort of build these computers that are sort of pinging each other, and the computers are actually talking to each other. And since 2008, when they can exchange real value with each other, that also makes so reward systems is in some ways invincible, that they are more visible where there are humans involved. And I know what people are going to say, yeah, there are still humans involved with these systems, but clearly they're going towards needing less like humans that are constantly like doing stuff. Or even if you look at the world and you sort of people find sort of smooth ways to sort of maybe hide technology. And because even with let's say the payment system that's using technology, it's not, or maybe you can say it's visible. It's a small little gadget. When you go to like a coffee shop, it's a small little gadget, and you have some form of card or something, and you're doing something with this machine. But if it's going to go more to almost invincible, eventually it's going to be as, before you even go to, let's say, a coffee place, you already have made the order on your smartphone with an app, so that you don't even need that visible technology that you have in a coffee shop. You don't, and then it becomes even more invincible. And then eventually you can have it just so you say something, you say some word, and then it sort of made the order. And you didn't even need to use hardware or software that is, let's say, visible. Now this might sound super weird and super confusing and stuff like that, but clearly your voice can make a command happen, right? You shouldn't really have to hold a thing in your hand to do something. You can if you want, but maybe you want to program it so every time you say a specific word, the internet, and then this is also comes down to, okay, sure, you need some form of internet connection, right? Because you need to make it know that a specific voice is going to do something on the internet, make a command. So in some ways, yeah, you need to have some form of internet access that connects with something, but do you really need a lot of hardware or software to do this? I don't really think so. The question is just how good can you do this? And I think we're gonna see more sort of innovation in that space when more companies are basically earning their value with, let's say, virtual token-based systems that are basically invincible. So that means that eventually then they realize, okay, there's almost no money in this like hardware thing or this software thing because people already have the ideal software. And then they're eventually gonna look at, okay, let's just go straight to the source. Let's just do the best thing where a person just can use their voice and make some kind of command happen. And we see they're sort of trying to play around with this with sort of a new sort of wireless technology. Now, we don't know how that's going to play out because there probably is a lot of greed there, and building out that level of infrastructure is going to take some time. And we've seen in token-based systems amount of failures that happen, so we clearly can see also in the hardware space that there's probably is going to be a lot of failures, and people after failures eventually going to realize, okay, this is actually how we should do it, because there probably is going to be a lot of mistakes being done because a lot of it is just nobody really knows how. Like when technology becomes really advanced, nobody really knows exactly how, like what is the best systems to implement it, because you sort of have to see with humans also how they are going to interact with the piece of technology. That it's not just a numbers game, it's not just a production game, it's also how humans are going to use their own intelligence and then give them some technology, right, and see how they use it. So it is going to that space where it somewhat is going to be almost invincible technology that humans are going to interact with. And I think that you probably is going to have, just as you have in other industries, that yeah, a person can create their own hardware and they can create their own software, but maybe majority of people probably is not really gonna have a deep desire for that. Same as we're seeing in the world, say, yeah, you could create like a painting and stuff like that, but maybe not everyone's gonna do that. So just because you can do something doesn't mean that massive amount of people is gonna do it. A lot of stuff stays as a gimmick or is a small niche industry, while some things really caught on and becomes huge. So that's kind of cool. And I don't think people realize eventually the impact of it, because a lot of people are very identified with sort of the current structure, especially if they sort of have a job. They're sort of running on a lot of old technologies, and a lot of old technologies, they're really fine. It's not like they're useless already, but you do have this adoption trend, as you do have in all industries, with the telephone line 100 years and a lot of technologies that takes a lot of time to adopt, but then people sort of see the benefits, and they want to use the new technology eventually when they sort of start to understand it, and when they sort of see the benefit, when they can sort of enjoy the benefits of it. There's a lot of stuff that people do not get like massive benefits from, but they're kind of cool. But then eventually the it's more an opportunity cost eventually to sort of stay on old technologies, especially when you get the mainstream masses to sort of get them to buy in to better, efficient, more use better systems, and systems that are basically more resistant and more prepared for a changing landscape of so a lot of the systems that was built out with technology that we are currently running on, they weren't really that much designed for, they were more nation-based designed, right? Not as globally designed for systems that basically billions of people will eventually use on. And the technology that you're using for millions of people or thousands of people is usually not going to work that great for billions of people, because you're just going to run into a lot of issues. Both the people sort of making up their own sort of games and complicated systems, and just the scalability aspect, that a lot of old technology was not really built to do massive scale. It was just the best they had at the time, and it was also probably a lot of ignorance that it looked like the best thing to do, and then when people have more free time, they can sort of look at stuff and then sort of see, okay, wait, it's like maybe some mistakes were done that now we sort of have to redo some stuff. And then eventually in the future, when people get even more intelligent than we are, when they also expand their borders of ignorance, they're probably going to look at the stuff that we did, and they're going to look at, okay, they weren't really that smart. We have better ways to do stuff right now. And a lot of stuff like this sort of changing landscape, it's not just about like the technology, and it's super cool that technology can become almost invincible and stuff like that, but get the same outcome. But the reason why intelligence works the way it does, why people make so different choices and stuff like that, is because a lot of it comes down to like when people interacting eventually different in the world, and when people know more stuff, and when they really are using the best stuff, that is also when people start to do different choices. When they see that other people, let's say, have buy-in to something and they're using something and they sort of see that it's working, that is eventually when people start to make sort of different choices. So how people interact in the world, what people they're talking to, what they're paying attention to, a lot of this plays big roles. So people, for example, have a lot of attention on just entertainment-based stuff, and that doesn't mean like it looks like it's popular because it sort of moves stuff forward, but a lot of that is just like group-based thinking, that a lot of people saving time and energy. And this is also good, that people trying to use groupthink to save time and energy, to look at, okay, we're paying attention to this sort of entertainment here. It's sort of, it's doing something. I don't really know exactly what it's doing, but it's doing something that seems to be beneficial. But many times that may not actually be super, super beneficial. And then eventually you sort of start to see, you get a gradual shift in terms of people's attention on a daily basis, and they sort of start to invest in other things and sort of using their eyes to observe other stuff in the world and sort of interact. And they sort of, and when they, and as I said, when they see that other people have sort of buy-in into something, then they hang around. Like they hang around to see for themselves, is something working, is it not working, what is this technology about, how can I learn more, or what are other people doing. And it can actually be very, very deceptive if you're just looking what other people are doing, because many people are just trying to figure out for themselves, like, what they should be doing and stuff like that. And a lot of people is kind of confused a bit, but the more they sort of pay attention, eventually you sort of start to see a lot of people are drifting away from just the entertainment-based stuff to more trying to see where stuff is going, and that they're more and more focused a little bit on wanting to know stuff and not just wanting to be entertained. Because if basically if they do the same thing, exactly the same thing as their parents, then it's like, well, are we really moving forward if they're watching the same entertainment, doing exactly the same things? No, they sort of want their own thing. They sort of want to advance, right? And this is also just a life process. That life is like, it's an energy that tries to sort of push stuff forward. So yeah, technology for sure is going to more almost invincible modes, where less hardware, less software needed, can do the same thing. And it's kind of cool with this, because that means that people are going to have more movement in the world, because they're going to be like less restricted, because they have more access. They have the same access or more access, but they just need less tools, and that is kind of cool. And yeah, that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. Have a great day, YouTube and the Steam blockchain. Bye bye.